So we have the helicopter moving, a simple movement. I click play again. You'll see that we got the helicopter moving in the first video by adding forces and getting the input from the player. And now what I want to do is get the camera following this helicopter and making him move a little bit more interestingly so that he switches directions and does other cool things. So to do that, we have a camera in here, and this camera is not a prefab, it's just a camera that's in the scene. But you can see that I actually already have a diagram behavior on it. I'm going to remove that so I can show you again how to add one. Add component, virtual hammer, diagram, diagram behavior. And it's an empty diagram behavior, which is the script on how we're going to get this to follow this. But you can see that this is start, and start only happens once when the thing comes alive, so that's not what I want to actually use. I want this to constantly follow the helicopter. So constantly means update. I'm going to click on that plus, go to base events, and update. And since the helicopter is actually moving in fixed update, I'm going to use fixed update for this. So this is the event I want, fixed update. And as the helicopter moves in fixed update, this camera, we're going to get it to follow that helicopter. Now to do that, I need to understand where the helicopter is. And to do that, I need a variable to track that. So I'm going to create a variable. And the variable I want here is called a transform. So if I spell that correctly, I will get a component transform. That's the variable I want. And I'm going to type in heli transform. And you'll see it pops up right here. Now, every game object in the scene is going to have a transform because the transform holds the position, the rotation, and the scale of the object that is in this scene. So I need the position of the helicopter to track with the camera. See that the helicopter, if I click on it, it has its own transform, position, rotation, and scale. And I need that over here in my main camera. So I want the helicopter's transform. And to do that, since I'm in the scene and the camera's in the scene, I can just grab this helicopter and drag it over to here. And you'll see that this gets the heli3 transform. Since this is a transform type variable, it knows which component to grab off of it, so it grabs the transform. So now I have access to all of the helicopter's transform information, most importantly, the position. So what I want to do is I want the helicopter's transform position to mimic I want the camera's transform position to mimic the helicopter's transform position on the X and Y, but not the Z, because I want the Z zoomed out a bit. So let's just start here. To get the main camera's transform, I could make another variable of transform type and drag it in and fill it in there. But for ease of use, we've made nodes that allow you this self-transform to get your own transform. And the transform, again, holds position, rotation, and scale, and I want just the position out of this. So position. And as I type position, there's a couple things that say position in here, but I want just, not the local position, I want just the position. I want to get its position. So from this position, I don't want to make it completely, I could make it stick right to the helicopter, but I kind of want it to do a softer follow and not just follow it real abruptly. I want it to softly follow and kind of lag behind for a smooth follow. So to do that, I'm going to use a function called lerp, vector3 lerp. And lerp basically just says over a small amount of time, make one value another value. And so I want to make the helicopter's position, or the camera's position, the helicopter's position, minus the Z. And I'll take care of the Z in a bit. But what I'm looking for is lerp. And I'm going to drag off of this so I get context. And I'm going to type in lerp, L-E, linear interpolation. I want this first one right here. And I'm going to drag, remember I have to come off the execute to make sure that this works. If I don't do that, nothing's going to come up. None of this is going to work because the logic flows through here. And so basically what this says is the transform that comes in, I want you to slowly make it the B transform over a small amount of time. And the small amount of time I can put in here is like 0.2 seconds. But now I need to say, where do I want this to go? And I want it to become the Helly's transform, so I'm going to add this, add to graph. And I want the position of this, position get. But I don't want the Z, I don't want this to be the Z, because if it was the Z portion of this, it would go right on top of the camera. I want it to be pulled out. So you can see in the scene, since I have my main camera selected, the Z is -30. It's pulled back -30 toward me, away from the thing, away from the helicopter. So I want to retain that. I'm going to make a new variable of type float. And I'm going to call this Z value. And I'm going to set it to -30. Fine. And so I don't want all of the pieces. I don't want to just drag this up to here because that would give me the X, Y, and the Z of that position. I want to make a new position for this. So I'm going to come off of this and I'm going to type assign. Assign vector 3. And this will allow me to custom the X, Y, and the Z for this. So to get the X, Y, and the Z, I can come off of position and type in, I just want the X. I'll have to come down to vector 3 here. X get. I want to get the X. Move this a little bit. Again, if you want to move nodes, you can just select them and move them. If I want to move the whole graph, middle mouse click will do that, or Alt and click will do that. But this is the X. I want whatever the X of the camera is, or the X of the helicopter, I want that to come into here. And I want to do the same thing for the Y. So vector 3, if I just come down here, Y get. But the Z, I want to be my custom variable that I made here, Z value, because I don't want it to change based on where the helicopter is going. I want it to always be the same. Drag off a Z, Z value. And so this is going to do it. But this is a function that takes values in, and it gives me the result I want. So this is still not going to set the camera. This is just going to do some work, and nothing's going to happen with it. You can see that I can move around. To do this, I need to actually take the value that's coming out of here, which is the return value of this function. If I right-click on this and go to documentation, you can see the C# script would be, it returns a vector 3 as the result of these things being passed in. So if you ever want to see the C# script, just right-click and you can go to documentation. This shows you, tells you what it does and shows you what the C# signature would be for that. But I still need to set the transform position of this based on the result of here. So I can get self again, self transform, and instead of getting the position this time, which I did here, I now want to set the position. So I typed in position again, and I want position set. And you see when I'm setting a variable, when I'm getting a variable, there's no execution sockets here, or plugs, just because I'm getting it. When I'm setting it, there are those because I have to set it. So I have to take the logic, put it through, and if I do that, this is the result I want. And now, you should see that the camera is going to softly kind of follow the helicopter around, because I'm telling it to follow the X and Y softly of that. So the last part of this, I want this to move a little bit more lifelike for a helicopter. And I'm going to go back into the helicopter prefab for this. Remember, this is an instance. I can modify things in here, but I would have to apply it to the prefab. So I'm just going to do it to the prefab itself, go into diagram. And what I want to do here is I want it to kind of mimic what direction it should be facing. I'm going to do this in update, actually. So I need a new variable to catch this, and I'm going to make a float called direction. Direction, yes. And this is going to tell me what was the last one of these I pressed. Was it, or what the value, I'm actually going to do it only on H input for left and right. If I pressed left and right, did I press left last or right last? And to do that, I need to say, off of H input here, I can say, get the value of H input, and I can do an if. If, which is this node right here, it takes in a true or false. I can say if, I'm going to drag off of this. Remember, this is -1 or 1 is what comes out of this. And I'm going to type in less than, less than. If H input is less than 0, I'm going to have to connect this because the logic has to flow through. If H input is less than 0, I want to set direction to be -1 because it's going to be -1 at that point. So add direction here. And remember, if we want to assign it, I'm going to type assign float, and I want to assign this to -1, to assign this variable, if it's true. Now I don't want to deal with 0, so the only other option this could be is I want to know if H float here, I can drag off this again, I can do is greater than 1, coming out because it's not less than 1. It could be 0, but I don't want to deal with 0. And I need a new if here. If, typed in if it's false, and if it's greater than 1 here, I want to copy this. I can copy all this actually. Control C, Control V. And if that's true also, I want this to be 1. So now my direction is going to be -1 or 1 based on if I pressed A or D and what direction I'm facing. Now that I know that, I can actually come down here and start doing some other things. I'm going to use something called a sequence node, which is basically just an organizational thing. I can right-click and type in sequence, execution flow sequence, and this allows me to break up, if I go to here, it allows me to break up kind of this graph into the way I want to organize it. This is going to go once, and then this is going to go right after it. So in a sequence, they'll fire off so that we could see all the logic here. I just don't want to keep going in this direction forever. I kind of want to break that up with a sequence. And so what I want to do now is I want to change the rotation of the helicopter based on which way I'm facing. So to do that, I need to actually get the transform of the helicopter, and I can do that on self-transform. And I need its rotation. Rotation. So off my transform, I can get rotation. That's what I want to do right there. I want to get the rotation. And I don't want this to instantly happen. Much like the camera, I kind of want it to be a soft turn. So I'm going to use something called a lerp there. Lerp allows me to interpolate between one value and the other over time, so it's not an instantaneous thing. This rotation, I'm going to drag off that, and I'm going to type in lerp. I know it's a funny name, but that's what it is. Lerp, it's for linear interpolation. And I'm going to drag off of here. So whatever the rotation is, I want it to become something else over a small amount of time. And that small amount of time, I'll just do 0.1. I want this to happen fast. Now I have to figure out, what do I want it to become? And that is going to come from this direction. I'm going to set the direction to 1 because that's the first way I want it to go. But I have to say, okay, I need direction, variable, prefab here, direction. And I need to multiply this by the direction I want this to go. So right now, if I click into scene, and I click on this helicopter, you can see that on the Y, it is already rotated 90 degrees, which means, like, think of this as the Y goes right down through the top of it. So it'd be like spinning like a top, and that's what I want it to do. X would be on the side of it, like doing cartwheels, or X would be somersaults, and Z would be cartwheels through the axis of these things. I want it to spin like a top, so I'm using the Y for that. And I have this in update. So the direction, I want it to be the direction, which is 1 or -1. And I want it to say, based on the direction, which I'm setting right here, based on if you pressed A or D, I want to multiply that. So I'm going to type in mult. And I want to multiply that by 90. Because it's either going to be 90 or -90. If you look at this again, it's going to rotate on the 90, which it should be if it's facing forward, or -90. So this is going to say 90 or -90 based on if this is 1 or -1. And here, I need to actually do something, because quaternions, you see this is a really weird word here, quaternion alert for the rotation. I need to use something called an Euler angle. I think I want an Euler XYZ, actually. This will allow me to assign it correctly through here. Now you see that these popped up, meaning that this is an execution flow one. I need to pass through that to get this to work. So I'm going to disconnect this, come up into here, and then come out of that to get that to work. But so this is the X I want. And if I just do this, this is going to set this, it's going to set this to be this times 90, and this should let me go left and right. Well, not yet, because I haven't assigned it. I also want it to pitch down based on what direction I'm pressing. I'm sorry, I want this to go into the Y. The Y component is going to be spin it like a top. But I kind of want it to pitch down if I'm going forward or backward also. So to pitch down, I want direction again. Know if I'm going left or right, direction. And I want this to be, this is not direction. For this, I'm going to use H input. H input, and I'm going to multiply this one, mult, MLT. I'm going to multiply this by 30. I think it's 30. It might be -30. And on the Z, I don't want it to go at all. And remember that this this is what the value is. So I actually have to set, much like I got the rotation here, I have to set the rotation off this transform. So I'm going to go self transform. Set rotation is what I want. Rotation set. There's execution tabs here, so I need to do that. And this is the rotation I want, the quaternion rotation. This might go the opposite direction. I don't know if it's going to do that yet. Nope, it was, oh, it is. It is the, you see when I go, it's actually not switching directions either on me. So I messed up a little. I gotta fix something here. Let's see what I messed up on. On this Y, I'm getting this direction times 90. And it's never coming back to here. So my logic here is kind of messed up. Less than 0. I put 1 here. I should not have done that. This should be greater than 0. That makes sure that it's 1 so it can assign to 1. this 30 degrees here, this is going to go positive and negative, and that's why you saw it pitch down when I go this way and pitch up when I go this way. I want it to pitch down both ways. And when I let go, you see how it goes back to not pitching down. And that's the lerp that's making it go kind of slow there and not instantaneously, which is nice because it actually gives it a softer feel for that. So what I want off this H input here is I actually want the absolute value of this because I always want it to go 30 down no matter what. So I'm going to disconnect this. And I'm just going to type in ABS for absolute value. That's math F ABS there. And you'll see that this is a math operation. So when I see these white things here, I still need to pass through again. So I'm going to kind of move this out of the way here because I know that goes right there. And I'm going to take this 2 here, pass through. It goes into A, and this goes to the next pass through here. Here we go. And now you can see that if I hit forward, it kind of pitches down both ways that I go, and then kind of goes to being straight again. And it turns back and forth. So now we have the camera following, and we have a kind of softer, better, more polished look of how this helicopter is moving here. So next we're going to start with these checkpoints. We're going to actually get these checkpoints moving, but we did kind of the same thing we did last time. We go on this helicopter again, go to diagram. We made a bunch more variables. We made variables that will allow me to do some things, and we called some functions and made it move differently.